Have you ever seen a castle that looks less like a building and more like a crown placed in the middle of a forest? That is the feeling Chateau de Chambord gives you from the very first moment. As you approach it, the towers rise above the landscape, the chimneys decorate the sky, and the whole castle seems almost unreal, too grand, too perfect, too theatrical to be just a former royal residence. But Chambord is not only one of the most spectacular castles in the Loire Valley, it is also one of the most fascinating. So, if you are planning a romantic trip through this part of France, the question is not only, should you visit Chambord? The real question is, how should you experience it? Chambord was ordered in 1519 by King François I, one of the great Renaissance kings of France. He was young, ambitious, fascinated by Italian art, and eager to show Europe the power and elegance of the French crown. But here is one of the surprising things about Chambord. It was not built as the king's main home. It was built as a royal hunting lodge. Of course, this was not a simple countryside house. This was a hunting lodge created by a king who wanted to impress everyone who saw it. Ambassadors, nobles, foreign rulers, and his own court. So from the beginning, Chambord was built as a statement of power, a statement of taste, and a statement of imagination. From the outside, the castle mixes different worlds. Some details remind you of medieval fortresses, the towers, the moat, the massive silhouette. But by the time Chambord was built, castles like this were no longer truly needed for defense. So these features were more symbolic than practical. They were part of the dream. François I was not just building a place to stay, he was creating an image of royal greatness. And that is why the first view of Chambord is so important. Before you go inside, take a few minutes to stand back and look at the whole chateau. Notice the symmetry. Notice the towers. Notice the rooftops, which look almost like a small stone city above the castle. Chambord is not a place you should rush into immediately. It is a place you should admire slowly from a distance, because the exterior is part of the experience. And the more you look at it, the more details you start to see. The architect of Chambord is still not known with certainty. But the influence of Leonardo da Vinci is often connected to the castle, especially because Leonardo spent his final years in France after being invited by François I. Even if we cannot say he designed Chambord completely, his influence is often seen in the central plan, the clever circulation, and especially the famous double-helix staircase. And once you go inside, that staircase becomes one of the most memorable parts of the entire visit. The double-helix staircase is not just beautiful, it is playful. It has two spiral ramps twisting around the same central core. Two people can climb at the same time, each on a different side. You may see each other through the openings, but you do not actually meet on the stairs. It feels like architecture turned into a little romantic game. And that is what makes Chambord special. It is not only huge, it is clever, theatrical, and designed to surprise. The interior itself may surprise you too. Many visitors expect a castle like Chambord to be filled with rich furniture, golden rooms and cozy royal apartments. But Chambord was not lived in continuously. The royal court moved from place to place, and the castle was often cold, empty, and only prepared when the king or important guests arrived. So the feeling inside is different from some other Loire Valley chateaux. It is less intimate but more mysterious. It feels like walking through a royal stage, not a private home. As you move through the rooms, look for the symbols of François I. One of the most famous is the salamander, his personal emblem. You can see it carved into the decoration, often surrounded by flames. The salamander symbolized the king's ability to survive fire and master it. Once you notice it, you start seeing François I's presence all over the chateau. And yet, one of the interesting facts about Chambord is that François I did not spend much time here. He created this extraordinary monument, but it was not very practical as a permanent residence. It was difficult to heat, difficult to furnish, and designed more for royal display than everyday comfort. Later, other historical figures added their own stories to Chambord. Louis XIV, the Sun King, stayed here several times. Under his reign, the castle was finally completed, and the surrounding estate became more developed. One of the most interesting cultural moments happened in 1670, when Molière presented Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme here for the first time, in front of Louis XIV and the royal court. So when you walk through Chambord, try to imagine it not as a silent monument, but as a place once filled with music, theater, horses, candles, noble guests, and royal entertainment. That is where the romance of Chambord really comes alive. Not as a quiet love story, but as a grand spectacle. And this is also why the equestrian show fits so well into the visit. If the show is available when you visit, it is worth considering, especially if you want the day to feel more memorable. The show brings movement and atmosphere to the history of Chambord. With horses, costumes, and theatrical scenes, it helps you imagine the castle as it once was, a place connected to hunting, power, royal display, and courtly life. After walking through stone rooms and staircases, watching the horses gives the whole experience a different energy. Suddenly, Chambord feels less like a building and more like a living story. For a couple, it also gives the visit a better rhythm. You are not only walking, reading signs, and taking photos. You sit together, watch the performance, and let the history become more visual and emotional. Another fascinating chapter in Chambord's story comes much later, during World War II. Because of its size and location, Chambord became one of the places where important artworks were hidden for protection. Some of France's most precious cultural treasures passed through or were sheltered here. So this castle, originally built to impress kings and ambassadors, later became a refuge for art. Chambord is not only about power and beauty, it is also about preservation, about protecting culture in a dangerous time. After visiting the interior, make sure you go up to the terraces. For us, this was the most magical part of Chambord. Start with it if possible, and reserve enough time. From the terraces, you are no longer looking at the towers and chimneys from below. You are walking among them. You can see the sculpted details up close, look over the gardens, and admire the forest stretching around the estate. Then, when you come back outside, the gardens bring a calmer rhythm to the visit. But it is important to know what to expect. If you imagine colorful flower gardens, Chambord may not be exactly what you expect. The gardens are French-style formal gardens, elegant, symmetrical, and mostly green, with clipped shrubs, lawns, structured paths, and wide views toward the chateau. So the romance here does not come from flowers everywhere. It comes from balance, symmetry, and perspective. The gardens frame the castle beautifully. They make Chambord look even more dramatic, especially when you turn around and see the whole chateau rising behind the green patterns. For couples, this is a lovely place for a slow walk and photos from different angles. And if you have more time, remember that Chambord is not only the castle and gardens, it is also a huge estate. You can explore parts of it by walking, biking, taking a Rosalie, or enjoying the canal area below the chateau. This can be a wonderful way to make the visit feel more relaxed and romantic, especially if you do not want to rush immediately to another castle. Instead of treating Chambord as a quick stop, you can turn it into a slower half-day experience. The chateau, the staircase, the terraces, the gardens, the equestrian show, and a peaceful moment outside in the estate. Now here are a few practical tips. First, book in advance. Chambord is one of the most famous castles in the Loire Valley, and it can feel busy even outside peak season. We booked the Passport Chambord, and for us it was a good choice because it included a fuller experience, especially with the equestrian show. Second, do not plan Chambord as a rushed stop. If you only want a few photos, you can visit quickly. But if you want to feel the place, give it more time. For a romantic itinerary, a slower rhythm makes the visit much more enjoyable. Third, arrive early or stay later if you want softer light and fewer crowds. The middle of the day can feel busy, especially with groups. Early morning gives you a calmer first impression, while late afternoon can make the chateau look warmer and more cinematic. Fourth, make food part of the experience. There are food options around Chambord, but if you want a more special day, consider a traditional French restaurant or even one listed in the Michelin guide in the wider Blois-Chambord area. After visiting such a dramatic royal castle, a slow French meal with local ingredients and wine can turn the day into a full romantic experience. And finally, choose accommodation that keeps the mood of the Loire Valley. If possible, stay somewhere with a beautiful setting, near the river, in a charming village, or with peaceful views. We stayed in a place with views toward the Loire, and it made the trip feel even more romantic, especially in the evening. So, is Chambord worth visiting as a couple? Absolutely, but come with the right expectations. Chambord is not the most delicate or intimate chateau in the Loire Valley. It is not all soft rooms and flower gardens. It gives you something else. Drama, scale, history, architecture, forest, royal imagination. It is the castle you visit when you want to feel impressed, when you want to stand together in front of something grand, and when you want one of those travel moments that feels much bigger than ordinary life. Come for the first view of the chateau. Come for the double-helix staircase. Come for the terraces. come for the formal gardens. Come for the equestrian show if you can. And come with enough time to enjoy it slowly. Because Chambord is not just a castle to visit. It is a castle to experience.